So I came here, I think in 2018, December, to address some students at the arts department, dance department or arts department. I don't know what it is. But today it's been a pleasure to come here. I have already met Tejasvi and Mitendra, and I have gained so much in knowledge because you can imagine COVID compelled many new learnings, even for old dogs like me, you know. We had to learn to use social media better. We had to learn to use Zoom, and they tried very hard to teach me how to use something else today. I have forgotten what it's called, also Teams, Microsoft Teams. And I refused because I'm just too old. You know, you can't teach old dogs new tricks, but you can keep the flag flying for old dogs. And I was asked today to speak on when art meets activism. And I just love talking on this subject because I'm driven by activism and I just adore the arts. So I have lived my entire life. I'm 60 this year. I think for 50 years of my life, I have been engaged, committed at various levels in the whole spectrum of engaging and commitment with the arts. My personal bias is towards dance. And so many examples that you will hear me cite today will be from the field of dance. I have actually prepared a small PowerPoint, and as always, I've got it all ready. Just a second. Yes, and I have to share. So, boys, how do I do it here? Christ. I have some other image here now. How does this play out?
I'm sharing. Yeah, ma'am.
Now, have I shared it now? You can
yes,
see
ma'am.
it? Okay, thank you. So it's called When Art Meets Activism. And I'm speaking from an autobiographical perspective. I think when you become 60, you can afford to do that without sounding intelligent. And so here I am to talk to you about my journey in artivism. That does not mean that I'm not aware of other people's contributions. And in the course of the presentation, I will certainly be referring to the work of other people as well. Now, the first thing that might strike you in this title, My Journey in Artivism. What is this word? Do you find it in any dictionary? If you were to Google it, would it come out? No, it wouldn't, because actually this is a portmanteau word. Portmanteau means two words coming together. In Hindi, we would call it a sandhi. I mean, in Sanskrit, we would call it a sandhi. But in English, we refer to it as a portmanteau word. It is the coming together of art and activism. This word was, okay, so I've gone through this. This word was actually coined for the work that I am doing. And it's a rare honor for me. And that is why when I talk about art and activism, I always begin by referring to this. It's a word of recent coinage. Who coined it? Mr. Lalit Man Singh. For me, he is a Rasik, somebody who enjoys the arts. He is India's leading diplomat, who served as India's ambassador to the United States, went on to become the Foreign Secretary of India, and has played a very significant role in in what are known as track 2 diplomatic initiatives even today. He referred to this word artivism in the context of one of my foundation, which is the KRIS Foundation, which Vinny has very kindly referred to already. One of our presentations, it was an activist dance piece. And it was in a style called Kathak. Do you guys know this style called Kathak? Yes, it's one of the 8 classical styles of India. And it's the style from northern India. So sitting in Delhi, that's what you're likely to see much more. It was with reference to a piece in Kathak called Black and White. And the production was danced by Rani Khanam and a group from a dance school called Ahmed. When you hear Rani Khanam's name, you understand that she comes from a Muslim background. And this production was particularly, I call it my boldest and bravest work that I have done in my entire life, because it looked at the position of Indian Muslim women under Muslim personal law. India is one of the few countries in the world that still retains, that is a secular nation that keeps the Muslim personal law, as it does many other personal laws as well. And in this case, Rani had come to me and asked me, that she wanted to do that look. Hello, is there a problem? Should I continue?
Yeah, ma'am. Continue.
Okay, so Rani asked me that she wanted to do something on this very sensitive subject because, you know, Muslim means it's a minority. Personal law means it's linked with religion. So these are very dicey kind of subjects. So she said, I want to do it, but I don't have the guts to do it alone. I need you to be my dhal. Dhal means shield. And I said, okay, but I don't know enough about the subject. So then began this frantic reading, writing, research, going into the community, doing tests. May I request everybody to please keep their videos on mute, please? I mean, their whatever, connections on mute. Yeah, thank you. So anyway, we went into the community. We did dipstick tests to find out how much was the knowledge about Muslim personal law amongst the women, amongst the men, and amongst those who were going to interpret the law, namely Qazis and Maulvis and such like people. And we were quite shocked to realize that the knowledge was very limited in all cases. Okay, so now my presentation is referring to classical dance, but we wanted to look at classical dance as going beyond beauty and ananda. If there's any dancer amongst you, you will understand these words that I'm talking about, Saundarya, Ananda and all that. And we wanted to use it as a weapon and to become a catalyst for the change we wanted to see. And you know that last year we celebrated 150 years of Gandhi. And so I think that it's a very relevant topic. I will speak a little later about, so I speak actually in this presentation about 2 works of art that were created in this series, My Journey in Activism. One is known as the Dance of the Birds, and the lady in the black and red is a Bharatanatyam dancer called Rama Vaidyanathan, who, by the way, is a trustee on KRI Foundation and a founder trustee on KRI Foundation. And with her, I had done this piece called Dance of the Birds, which talked about the environment. It was quite a bold move for its time. And the second dance was Black and White, which talked about the Muslim personal law. So where does one get the ideas that drive you in your life? So let me pause for a moment and see if you guys are even awake. Would you turn on your unmute your mics momentarily and tell me what drives you to do whatever you do? I mean, what sets the values in your mind?
If I say to ask this answer, I look up to the seniors who have already done the thing which I am passionate about. And that really sets the bar which I want to overcome and now to set a bar above it.
That's wonderful, but that pertains to the position now.
Yeah.
But बचपन से आप में जो values डाले जाते हैं, वो कहाँ से आते हैं?
Parents, majorly from parents.
और क्या सोच हो सकती है? Education. Yes. और जिस माहौल में आपकी परवरिश होती है, like even religion plays a very important role in it. So I was born into a practicing Sikh family that believed in the motto of, if there are any Sikhs present here, you would be able to find this familiar, Naam Japo, Kirat Karo, Vand Chako. Keep your mind on God, do labor that is positive, and share with the less privileged. This has been a very important part of my growing up. Hearing these 3 lines since I was a child. Listening to stories of people like Bhai Kanhaiya, who did it as a duty. His duty was as a water server, and he provided water to injured and dying people on the battlefield without consideration of caste, creed, and religion. So you know that the Sikhs have this langar, and you do seva, and you clean the plates that are used and all that. All that was a part of my growing up. So I grew up with a particular kind of mindset. Then I was educated in a convent. So then began the entry of the nuns and compassion and Christian values and all that. But for me, I was not yet 14, or I was just 14 or something like that. I met Mother Teresa. And I couldn't believe that she stopped in front of me. She was a Loreto Nun. I was a young Loreto girl. She came to our school to visit and she stopped in front of me and put her hand on my head. वो दिन गया और आज का दिन आया और मैं तो at the drop of a hat, I don't know what is keeping me engaged with the wondrousness of life. I can, in a jiffy, actually, I feel now more than ever before that I can slip into the white and blue in my life. Okay, so these are some influences that happen. I studied in the elite Lady Shri Ram College in Delhi University, and I realized my privilege. At the age of 18, one other imperceptible influence that came into my life was that my professor, my teacher there, Professor Meenakshi Gopinath, she compelled me to read Gandhi. So here was this 16-year-old reading concepts of trusteeship, generational responsibility, satyagrah, ahimsa, and it just sunk into me without my realizing it that we actually hold our world and our life. Our life is dedicated to holding the world in trust for the next generation. So we cannot be eating more than what we need to. We can't be consuming more than what we need to. And so curtailing my greed, stemming from a Gandhian thought which said, there is sufficiency in this world for man's need, but not for his greed. And that doing a bit of good every day became a way of life. And it has come back to hit me. Imagine I'm 16 then, I'm 16 now, and COVID happens in my 60th year, and it has shaken the grounds on which I have walked. And this is really the purpose of my life. So everybody talks about Thanksgiving. So I actually got a wonderful moment of Thanksgiving in my life. And this was when, I think the year was 2002, I applied for a Fulbright program. When I was your age, I had put in front of my desk 3 names. People put Salman Khan picture and all that. I put 3 words. I was such a loser, man, from the beginning of time, I think. I put Rhodes, I put Fulbright, and I put Inlands. These were the 3 scholarships I wanted to get. And I worked very hard for it initially. And then adolescence comes, and then comes all this attention from gentlemen, and life is so beautiful, and go to college and wear nice clothes and go out on dates and things like that. And somewhere I forgot those 3 words. And by now I had got married, there were children, and suddenly I walk into my office, which was the India Habitat Center, which again Vinny has referred to, and I find lying on my absolutely clean desk, because I'm hyper about cleaning the desk before I leave the office, and I see one paper lying there which said Fulbright. I have no idea who left that paper. To date, I don't know. I came in and I said, how cruel is this? And I threw that paper in because I had 2 children and they were the priority. And then I dived in because in the corner of my eye, I had seen the date written on that thing. And I realized that was for the year, the only year where there was even the sliver of possibility. And because one child had just finished class 10 board, class 12 was still a little away, and the second one was nowhere near any board exam. So I thought maybe that is the only year I can get away. And so I filled the form and I applied and I got it. I was so shocked. I thought again, God was speaking. And when I got it in 2003, my first thing was an act of thanksgiving, the setting up of KRIS Foundation. KRIS Foundation works in 3 areas: arts, scholarship, and development. And in the work of KRIS Foundation lies my journey of activism. So our arts, scholarship, and development. So just a little bit, I created these lecture series, and the lecture series that Vinny has referred to just now, which are under a rubric of arts and the law, is an unusual curation. Law people study law, arts people study arts. Nobody studies the 2, and yet they are so deeply engaged. For instance, copyright, which is our next topic on the 10th. English, that's not right. Yeah, okay. So I started a whole series of lectures. This was the first in the series, Vidvatva, which is actually a Thanksgiving ke andar hi ek aur Thanksgiving kind of a thing, because it was with the Fulbright. We presented scholars who came from the United States, or scholars, Fulbright scholars who were from India. It was a binational thing. Every session had at least 2 countries represented on it. But in development issues, we did a wider range of activities. Now, I set up KRI Foundation in 2003, and in 2005, my husband, who was working then with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which you already had a reference to by Vinny when she introduced me, passed away in a suddenly, and I was invited to the UNODC office, and I thought they've just called me for some administrative work like signing some papers and all. No, my dear, they called me to join them. I was shell-shocked. My husband was world-class at what he did, but I was world-class at what I did, you know. So I kept telling them, no need to be compassionate towards me on this issue. Don't give me a compassionate job. I'm fine and all that. But they said no, they'd been wanting me to join. And so now is a good time. And I learned issues of development. Now, the one thing that I must tell you, it's a fascinating area to work on. And for somebody like me, with all that history that I've just recounted to you, it was a God-sent opportunity. And if any of you are interested in script writing for cinema, let me tell you how cinematic that moment was. On my 45th birthday, I joined the UN and started a new life. And the training I got in the UN to train other people as well. First, to learn the development issues, to learn how integrated they all are, and then to train myself has stood me in very good stead all my life. I was 45. I needn't have done the kind of thing. Teen baje tak, I was reading and understanding, looking at graphs, studying patterns and things. I could have just said, okay, ho gaya about bhai, I've done my labit and all that. But my God, I'm so glad I did it, because it has stayed with me. It has become part of my DNA. Every breath when I take, I'm looking at development issues all around me. I'm looking at opportunities to speak and things. Abhi to aap logon ke saath to mera kaam shuru bhi nahi hoya hai. Wait till I come to little duties that I give to you all. So one of the things I looked at, because I was working on the sunshine sector of drugs, which is drug prevention, I worked with adolescent kids. That meant that I had to look at adolescent issues in a holistic perspective. Adolescents, by the way, is a non-voting population, and it has none of the political parties have any interest in having a plan or program for adolescent issues. So the first thing is, since you all are just about out of adolescence, maybe you can make a hue and cry about making adolescent issues more central than they are right now in planning and development vision for the country. Drugs and HIV prevention, they went hand in hand. Why did they go hand in hand? Here's a question I want to ask you. Why do we talk about drugs and HIV in the same sentence? Would anybody like to take a guess? Why do I see only 3 people and I see one number saying 44 here? So the other 41, hello? Why don't you guys tell me? I can't see you, but if you just fastest finger first, tell me. Unmute and tell me, why are drugs and HIV talked in the same sentence? So, Vinny, I think I need to come and face them one day, face to face, to do my session on drugs and HIV prevention. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that drug use often leads to HIV. It's one of the health harms that happens as a result of drug use. Now you would turn around and say, oh, it must be injecting drug use. And I will turn around and tell you that only 2% of India's population is HIV positive because of injecting drug use. How do the others? It's through unsafe sex. And drugs creates within you a urgency for a here and now sexual encounter, which does not, by its nature, is seldom a responsible encounter, and seldom with preventions and precautions, and more often than not with risks. So 97% of India's population HIV positive because of drug use and the sexual route, not the injecting drug use. Okay, so here's a little thing. Child labor. This was the first project that KRI Foundation got. ILO wanted to publicize the child helpline. You know the child helpline? You know, there are a whole series of helplines. I suggest you take a moment after today's talk and get a set of numbers. There's a Corona helpline number, child helpline number, women helpline number. Maybe you should do that. They wanted us to publicize this, so we created a play out of stories from that I had gathered together from child labor who had come together as part of a theater exercise. And from their stories, we created this. I ended up working in jail settings. I mean, KRI Foundation ended up working in jail settings, penal settings, because that is where 100% of males in jails have encountered drugs sometime or the other in their lives. And because this became a learning for me from the UNODC, I got a chance to enter into the jail. Tihar jail. My husband had set up an NGO. He passed away. I took over the running of that NGO, and that's how I got to work there. Environment and development, ever a toss-up. Is it going to be environment? Is it going to be development? You know, everything is an issue. This famous RA colony tree cutting business, and it's a toss-up between environment and development. But here's what I want to say. Development can happen a kilometer to 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers away. But environment, once destroyed, is ever destroyed. Okay, so there is no second chance with environment, but there is a second chance with development. And finally, for the same reasons, heritage and development became an issue. While working on issues, we worked with schools, non-schools, teachers of schools, grown-up kids. You know, I used to be called very often. Guess on which day? Days. It was days when you're... Hello, would you please be kind enough to mute your mic?
So I want to know from you, first of all, these people should do this or not?
Goko's iPhone.
I have no idea who is doing this. Please, I request you to mute your mic. It becomes very distracting. Anyway, I also worked with street children. Street children are very acute drug-using children. I mean, it's an acute case there. It's a very difficult case to handle. So obviously, my least successful forays have been with street children. I worked with teachers. With we have officers of the like child protection officers and women protection officers. I worked with them as well. Now, this is a very important slide because this is the actual production of that play that we did on the stories of homeless children, child labor. And these are some of those children. We did 26 shows in all sorts of settings, including mandis and transport hubs, because there they use a lot of young people who are just called chotus. So we did a lot of them there as well. In penal settings, which is in jails, we partnered the NGO AASRA in bringing in art as therapy. We were looking at the rehabilitation of drug-using prisoners. My God, the one thing that I learned is that dance is a huge stress buster. Every time we did anything, every half an hour we had to stop and do 15 minutes of dance if we hoped to keep the group together and engage with what we are doing. So maybe I should use that same learning to get you all to dance a little bit also. आज नहीं पर किसी और दिन करूँगी ज़रूर. So we created plays with them. Fortunately for me, some of the most sort of experienced and well-known playwrights, actors, dancers, all joined me in doing this work. Now, one thing that you should know is that cameras are not allowed inside the jail. So where did I get these pictures from? The jail took it and gave it to me. But when I wanted to capture something, I would get mm, the jail people to paint, draw and paint. Badi restrictions hoti thi, we could not give them anything that could be used to harm themselves. We had to give them crayons and things like this. And if I'm not much mistaken, I think when you helped me get these papers.
Yes,
anyway,
I remember now. I did help you with one other art project. I remember when I was in college. I think the Delhi International Art Festival.
Yes. I have a picture from that too. So this is some seminars that we did as part of education building. Now let me tell you, knowledge wali baat jo ki thi na, arts development and knowledge. Somebody just said, can you imagine how bad it must be to get old in a jail? And it suddenly struck me, but I don't know whether I have read any studies about aging in the jail. So we did a quick dipstick test. And we did a survey. We had 3 counselors working for us in the jail, and we got them involved in this survey. My God, it was shocking. The end result for me was that people age a minimum of 10 years earlier in the jail. Because imagine, जिसकी आंख थोड़ी खराब है, वहां थोड़ी है कीजिए आप. जब आपकी मर्जी आप चले जाओ ऑप्थेमोलॉजिस्ट को मिलने या ऑडियोमेट्रिस्ट को मिलने या दांत खराब हो रहा है डेंटिस्ट को मिलने. It's a whole big siapa trying to get anywhere. So people went on with bad teeth, and the jail ki rotis are jail ki rotis. They are not soft mulayam pulkas and soft rice. And it's it's a fight for survival. So people who were getting old or incapacitated were not able to keep up. So they would eat less, they would become weaker, they would become more susceptible to infections. And even a small thing like going to the loo, you know that all the toilets in the jail are Indian style toilets, and people nowadays have knees that are very vulnerable. तो वो बैठ नहीं सकते थे. So what were the chance of you keeping good health if you can't even do your normal bodily functions in a safe sort of environment? Plus there was this whole thing of fear. रात को ब्लेडबाजी चलती थी, बल्ब को तोड़ दिया जाता था. So you lived with anxiety, so you aged much faster. That was one of our side journeys that we suddenly came up with in the jail thing. But even when it came to jail, I was always enthusiastic. And at that time, the Tihar jail people would contact me also. You may have heard of Mr. Sunil Gupta. He was the PRO of the Tihar jail. उन्होंने किताब भी अभी लिखी है हाल ही में. But he was my friend. Oh, क्या कर दिया? He was my friend in Tihar jail in the sense that I went and told him, you've set up a center of learning. Can I bring in artistic people to do talks? And so we had this lovely presentation by Binoy Behel on the dances of India and on Ajanta, Ellora's caves and Buddhist art. And of course, I could not call it any Teda Meda name. I had to call it a name that the jail would buy. So it was called Images of Compassion. Whatever, the work had to be done. And so I was willing to make compromises. I mean, I persuaded Binoy to say, yeah, we're not going by whatever you called it. He had some different name. We're going by Images of Compassion. Okay. So then my biggest test was this. This is part of the Delhi International. So I wanted to bring a dance performance. They told me no, 3,000 people males who have been in sort of incarceration, and they cannot have dancing and all that, girls dancing. So I said, please give me half a chance. And so I got this Odissi dancer called Kavita Dwivedi, and it was International Day for Drugs, HIV. And you can see the posters piche that we put. We did a little talk, we made all the right noises, and then Kavita danced. And she did just one piece because I was too scared to sort of, upset the apple cart. And in the end, she did Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. This is the moment when she's doing Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. And she told me, I have never done a performance like this. 3,000 people looking at me, all hopeless. And there was me praying for their well-being. I have never felt so powerful or so much of a medium between divine grace and those who were suffering. So even as I talk now, because this has been how many years, I still just get moved. No man, none of those people did any badtamizi. They watched with gaping mouths, like, tak-taki laga ke dekha, and they saw this amazing performance. And this was their brush with the arts. I want to tell you that, you talk about access to the arts. Well, here are people who have no access to the arts. Arts have to come to them. They cannot get up and go to Kamani Auditorium or any place like that. Arts have to come to them. So I was really happy. After Kavita's performance, many more artists, dancers, musicians came to me and said they wanted a chance to perform in Tihar jail. So we ran a program for a while. It was funding that eventually just killed it. And it wasn't that everybody was asking for much money, but there was zero money. And I could not keep bullying the artists and telling them to perform for free. Okay, I feel that you should also be concerned about your environment. बड़ी बड़ी ऊंची ऊंची बातें करना एक बात होती है, और उसी तरह से sensitivity दिखाना towards your immediate neighborhood is very important. So in that context, I have loved Delhi and lived in Delhi for very long, and I was very happy that KRI Foundation became a partner towards the initiatives that were started to get Delhi the UNESCO inscription of a World Heritage City. It was to happen in 2014. Unfortunately, the government changed, and a week before Delhi was to get that that recognition, the document was pulled away from UNESCO. That's another story of some other occasion where we can talk about it. Now, on environment issues. So people ask, how can you dance, do a whole program on environment issues? Well, you can, I worked with Rama Vaidyanathan. We created the dance of birds. Why? I am a bird watcher. I love birds, and I go out pretty much every Sunday, and I used to see these choreographies in the sky, and I'd always say, where are the dancers? Why aren't they seeing this? So Rama, being a very good friend of mine, poor thing, has had to suffer for that, and has listened for hours and hours about birds from me and all that. And then one day we just decided, let's do a program, an activism program on birds. So birds are common in the dance repertoire, so it wasn't something so out of the world and so freakily crazy or anything like that. But what was crazy was the way it was being introduced, because I would introduce it, and it was not, the dance program was not about raga, tala, and that sort of stuff, which is the normal material that you give. It was about the dance, about birds and how we are destroying the environment, and we used PowerPoints, and Rama danced. On these issues, you also have to keep an open mind. So KRI Foundation began running residencies for research and for arts. So scholars came to us, they discussed whatever they were talking about. We got new ideas, we pursued new ideas. Artists came to us, they talked about what they were doing. This is Jill Sigmund. She was our very first residence person. And if you Google her name, Jill Sigmund, you will find that she's done a lot of environmental work. Her latest is a very unusual thing. It's food sufficiency. And she lives in New York. And when I went there, she walked me through a small little park and plucked out leaves that could be eaten. And dandelion leaves were amongst them. Spruce trees, cut tops were amongst them. So all around us are growing plants that we can eat, So hunger should not exist. But we are not developing our knowledge. How many of us, tell me honestly, can any of you survive in the wilderness? No way. We don't know what is edible, what is poisonous. So that's the work that Jill is now doing through dance and opportunities like that. Do check her out. One of the residencies we did was for this man. Does anybody recognize him? I will advise you to think of a film called Ghosla Ka Ghosla. Do you remember a film called Ghosla Ka Ghosla? It's a really fun film. Anyway, he was called Shaitan Singh in that film, which cracks me up. I think he's called Shaitan Singh. This is a theatre person called V.K. Sharma. V.K. Sharma's house burnt on his head. So for 1 year, he stayed in KRIS Residency. It was a compassionate. It was one of KRIS. It is the only compassionate residency we have run. So when we turned 10 years old, which was in 2013, we initiated a program of Thanksgiving called Dasham Dakshanam. It had been 10 years of doing, dreaming, and daring. That is very important, daring. 10 years of pushing boundaries, 10 years of giving back, and so 10 years of Thanksgiving. We initiated many awards, but the most important thing we did that year was to do the production that I've referred to already, Black and White, which was about the rights of Indian Muslim women. And it was very bold. It was very bold because you can see in that gobo that is flashing, it flashed ayats from the Quran, words from the Quran, because we did not take a militant or agitational stance. We said that if it comes from the Quran, the Muslim personal law, then let's go back to the Quran and see what it writes. And many of the interpretations that prevailed had nothing to do with the Quran. That will be the subject of another discussion if I get half a chance. This is one of my first works that I did about dance, about arts and the law. Or up now I'm doing a 5-part series because I've been writing on arts and the law. And during the COVID period, what happened is many issues came to the forefront. The issues of copyright came to the forefront. This Sushant Riya drug story, arts and the law, that's what it is. A Me Too burst forth, arts and the law, Me Too in the arts burst forth. Then none of the artists had contracts. When COVID hit, they were the ones who were disadvantaged. But the saddest thing is, of it all is, you know who reneged on their contracts? The government. The government just threw up its hands and said, we don't have any money. We are not going to give you yours, grants and things. And the artists had already spent their own money to be able to do the production that grant gave to them. I will deal with this, but I just want to show you, look how different in Europe it is. Do you see that the dancing in the burqas? This is things that had not ever been done. I would love to speak to you someday about this. Maybe when I come on the 11th, we will talk about aspects of arts and the law. Let it go. Let it go for the moment. Let it go. Let it go. I'll talk to you that day. Yeah. Now, the important thing to understand is that art is not supposed to change the world, but to change practical things, to change practical things, but to change perceptions. How do you look at something? Art can change the way we see the world. And we felt that after Black and White, we had had success. Audiences wrote it, saying, my God, you opened our eyes. The press wrote very positively. Some press did not write positively, but I was very happy with that not writing positively, because that was the community press. That meant that the buzz had begun within the community. Sector workers asked us to share with them our scripts so that they could work, and why not? I could have sat and said, no, IPR, my script. Just gave that script. Because as Kavita said, I never felt so powerful before. I never felt such a strong medium. So too, I was getting this chance to be a medium. Now, KRI Foundation has constantly been writing about this work, about this bold artivism work that it has done. And in the process, it has not just enriched dance presentations, pushed the boundaries, but it has spoken up for the underprivileged and the marginalized. It has looked through the lens of feminism, environment, a focus on capitalism and its exploitative ways, on a hierarchical, unjust, exploitative paradigms of society, especially patriarchy. And our work plays out comfortably at a global level through performance and through scholarship generated around it. Now, my question to all of you as young people, full of idealism and energy, what is it that you think you can do to make the world a better place? Is it enough that you keep yourself safe and, on the right path? Or is there something that you can do for another? How hard do you have to work when you have to do for another? I particularly ask this question because if anyone amongst you are artists, I want you to just mention it, please. Because for you, I want to say that it cannot be business as usual anymore. We can no longer be like Nero, fiddling evocative melodies while the world is going up in flames and pyrotechnics around us. You who are artists, hear what we can't hear. You hear the unheard nad. And if you can hear the unheard nad, how can you not hear the cries of those who are in anguish? How can those cries not evoke Karunya Rasa in you? Karunya was the rasa which compelled Valmiki to write the Ramayana after hearing the cry of an injured bird. चिड़िया की आवाज से आप इतने मूव हो जाते हैं और इंसानों की आवाज से आप नहीं मूव होंगे. So artists have a bigger responsibility. And today, in a world ravaged with pain, neither stoicism nor silence is an option. And now I'm coming back to the general people, not just the artists amongst you. It is no longer doable for you to remain silent. Because if you do remain silent, you become part of the enablers. You become complicit in perpetuating injustice. And so it is the dharma of all sentient beings not to remain silent or inactive when fellow humans are in trouble. The question I asked you, what is it that you can do to make this world a better place? The first thing that you can do is be responsible for yourself. And the second thing that you can do is not remain silent. So when you see injustice around you, when you see exploitation around you, when you see class, caste, gender, capacities, injustices happening, please don't stay silent. That time for silence is over. We have seen by staying silent where we have brought the world. It's time to take it out of that mess. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad gave us the mantra, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. The daily ardas of the Sikhs, which is my communities, ends with the blessings, Sarbat Dabala. Gandhi lit the lamp and showed us the way through the words of Narsim Mehta when he said, Vaishnava Janato, Tine Kahiye, you are called a true Vaishnav. Peer Padai Janre, when you understand the pain of another. For me, politicians play for short-term goals. They're concerned about hustings, winning in the elections, somehow. EVM, TVM, jo bhi karna hai, karo. We know, we are seeing this drama going on around. The statesmen have gone a-missing. Sagacious voices are absent. That is why you have so much attrition on social media. Religious leaders, they are corporate honchos now. The press takes sides. Who then can speak up for the truth? Who can hold the mirror to society? So I don't know if you know about a form of theatre called Videsya. Bihari Thakur created it, and in his Videsya he wrote, Naach kaanch hai, parantu baat sanch hai. Do you understand what that means? The dance is like a shining mirror, and what it shows is the truth. Can dancers be the sages of Satya? Can the young people be the ones who can hold the flag that says Satyameva Jayate? It's time for us to weaponize whatever skills we have, as we have increased our skills during the COVID time and witnessed silently terrible trauma that the world has experienced of all kinds, I mean, the sight of those migrant laborers was unparalleled. Do you know that was the biggest migration ever? Ever. No Pakistan, India, partition and the crossing over, nothing. That nothing matched what has happened here. So I suggest that let us be the refugers of society. You know what refugers are? They are darners. देखा होगा आपने ड्राई क्लीनिंग की दुकान पे कभी कभी बैठा होता है. Kashmiri darners, they are the best darners. The Kashmir today itself needs to be darned. We can no longer be rangrazias, who are those who color cloth. And arts color the mind, man. That's why they call Manoranjan. We cannot have only Manoranjan. Both as givers of Manoranjan, producers of Manoranjan, and as consumers of Manoranjan. That's not enough of a life. Today, you have to be refugers, strengthen the fabric of humanity. So I think I'll end it here. And I hope that some of you will ask me some questions. If not, as you can see, I can talk non-stop. Okay, so 2 people have raised their hands. How do I get to know where they are, who they are? Kahan gaye bhaiya? Kaun hai raise hands wale? Oh yeah, Love Sharma and Isra. Hi Isra. Love, आप पहले जाएंगे?
Let it be ladies first, ma'am. Let it be ladies.
Okay, Isra.
Ma'am, firstly, I'm really touched by what you said today. I mean, we all need to be empathetic in this time. Ma'am, I want to ask you, like, what's your take on borders, like dividing states, dividing countries? Like, how do you think it affects our consciousness? How it has affected our consciousness at this point?
Okay, that's a very nice question. You'll give me a minute. Love, can I ask you what your question is so that if there's somewhere close by, I could even try and...
So, hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, my dear.
Yes. Very good evening to one and all. So, my question was related to your work, your activism in the jails. So, I'm a bit afraid about the kind of after impact it has, because we giving motivation and messages to people who have criminal mindset, or I'm assuming that the people who are in jail are already having a criminal mindset. So how are we actually measuring? I think it's very ambiguous that what kind of after impact it's create, because we do not have a particular data or any proper source of actually analyzing that what kind of after impact it has. So what was your targets? What were you people envisaging that this is the kind of impact that we will be able to create by performing dances, performing awarenesses in the jails?
So I will answer the 2 questions in the order in which they were asked. So Isra, your question first. Where there are 2 people, there definitely already exists a division, because there can't be, 1 person in 2 kind of a thing. But I think that the divisions we have made this far have not been the divisions that are really important. And regrettably, we are making further and further more divisions and dividing society down even more manners. I think the age of the nation state is over. And I say this at a time when nationalism is at its height in India. I think that there is a globalization. I think there is a very strong migrational patterns. There are homelands that people once were part of, that they have long left within the country, even within already existing national boundaries. The numbers of migrants, the numbers of refugees, the numbers of displaced people are just so many that things keep falling for many people. They can't seem to get out of the quagmire of poverty and needs and wants. And despite that, we talk about very proudly the nation supporting activities that lead to statelessness further. Whatever's happening in Assam, with its 19 lakhs standing like this, a thin thread holding them, is really tragic. If you go to my PhD is on Assam, by the way. If you go to those centers that can't decide whether they are the centers of those people who were marked out by the NRC, there is so much sadness and tragedy. Look at the Rohingya people. Instead of going forward, for some strange reason, we seem to be coming backwards. So what links us together always used to be much more than what separated us. But more separations are artificially and unnaturally being created for very small and short-term gains. every time a group is dispossessed, a new elite rises. This attempt by new elites to constantly enrich themselves through this sad process of dispossessing is not the way I would have liked to live out my days. But I sadly witness it and feel really bad about it. I don't know whether that answers your questions or not. I remember when I was a younger person and I used to go, I'm from the Punjab, and going to Amritsar was a regular thing. And my dad and all used to take me to Vagabond. I've never seen anything more disgraceful than what happens at the Vagabond. You know, that choreography of the evening performance with its cockfight moves and its very goose steps kind of thing, yelling at each other.
And I can keep your secret. I am very
Sanskar. Can you please mute yourself?
Anything of yours?
So at that time, I used to, every time there is a moment when the two gates between Pakistan and India open, and I used to do this quick, desperate prayer, please, please, please keep these gates open. I think we need to keep a lot of more gates open. I think we need to build less walls. We need to bring down differences. We need to come together. And when we have a World Wide Web, when we have businesses that are engaged in this global pattern, I don't know how the two incongruous things seem to overlap. How can they imbricate in this unusual manner? So, Isra, that's what I want to say to you. To you, love. Yeah. When my husband passed away, he had been working with Kiran Bedi, who was at that time in an DIG or DGP or something. She IG prisons. She headed Tihar jail. And she was a big Vipassana kind of person. She does a lot of Vipassana. And she wanted to introduce Vipassana and change Tihar from a jail into an ashram. And she has a book written about that experiment. And in that, my husband is mentioned. He had done a lot of work with her, and much of this program of the drugs and all that in the jail, the study of the jail thing was done by him. And I felt that while they had begun to make things happen, the system wasn't walking as fast as their vision was. So while Harinder, that's my husband, was talking about drugs in the jail manual said drugs are not allowed. But we knew in reality that drugs were doing the rounds in the jail. Why only drugs? Many other substances were doing, all kinds of not right things were happening in the jail. So whatever one did in the environment of knowing that we are making with great effort 2 steps forwards, but we are going back 10 steps. But if we did not make that 2-step forward effort, we would, when we went back 10 steps, we were actually going back 8 steps. So then we would push again and make 2 more steps, and then we would go back a few more steps. We were reducing the gap from the original point that we were standing. That really was the only thing that could drive us, because talk about jails, they're overcrowded, they have such a strong population and such a large population of under trials. And you know the problems of under trials. I mean, so many films have been made. That becomes a bed of further expanding the criminal population thing, because to survive in the jail, you have to belong to one gang or the other. And so you do all sorts of odd jobs and things. It's a whole ecosystem within it. So what do people who work in the sector do? Development is really helping improve the ecosystem. It cannot improve exponentially. You have to be very patient, and it improves slowly and slowly and slowly. And we just hope that each time we make a shift forward, it doesn't go back in policy. So this is a very big thing. How much success did we have with those dance performances, education programs? Not very much, because we kept a tab. ASRA, the foundation we worked with, was responsible for rehabilitation of drug addict prisoners. So once a prisoner came, he was compulsorily put through de-addiction and then given to us. Now, this de-addiction process that they were put through was quite cruel. I mean, they were like shaken absolutely and terrified. उनको एक अस्तित्व देना, वो हमारा काम था. So, क्या हम सबके साथ सक्सेसफुल हुए? नहीं, पर 10 लोग तो एटलीस्ट हमारे एफर्ट से निकल के आ गए. They could escape the Chakravyuh because you kept coming back to the jail. It's very hard. Tell me, you use the word criminal mindset. Would you give a job to somebody who was released from the jail? When they wouldn't get jobs, they would go back to the drug life, to peddling, and they would get captured again. And they would come right back and they would do the de-addiction. And then, hello, within 2 weeks, they were with our counselors. And we had to work with them again. It had become a joke. We knew so many of them by their names already before they joined us, because of this thing. But like I said, this analogy कि 2 कदम आगे चलते थे तब जब 10 कदम पीछे आते थे, फिर हम 2 कदम चलते थे और 10 कदम वापस आते थे. So this was the big
This is one of the most beautifully answered questions I've ever heard. I have to say that, and it's real. And I really appreciate the commendable work and in versatile directions that you have been working. I wish more power and more strength to you, and you keep motivating youngsters like us to do this in the same way. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, love. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
If there aren't any questions, can we give a thank you note to ma'am for coming in?
How much time do we have? It's 9:04. Yeah, that's my hour is over. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you ever so much for giving me this chance to share my journey, my thoughts, some of my ideas with you. I'm sorry, there's so much more I can talk on this subject. Maybe some other time. Maybe I'll just keep coming on the Zoom thing.
We also can hear a lot about it also.
We would love to have you. We would love to have another webinar with you.
एक तो भैया कंफर्म कर देना मेरे को कि 11th को मेरे को आना है कि नहीं, and we will talk about arts and the law at that time. It's really a fascinating subject.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay.
So thank you once again for coming in, Dr. Sethi. It was really nice, and I think the students have immensely benefited, and we really didn't know how this 1 hour passed by. And there's so much that you've done in your life which is so inspiring, and there's so much to learn from. And I am a witness to what I am today. I owe a lot to you, and I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I think it's just karma, and it all comes back. And when I started my career, I think you were a true mentor and a guide, and I really hope, and to all of you who are listening, I was exactly your age when I started to work with her, and there was so much exposure that she gave me when I was just 18, 19, 20, and I owe a lot to you, and I'm so thankful to you for coming in today. I don't know what's gone wrong with my camera, and I've logged in from my son's account because it's just.
Yes, I noticed little boy's name written.
Yes, kill me for it because he keeps telling
I
Mama.
want to tell you, हर माँ बाप को या हर मेंटर को बहुत अच्छा लगता है जब उनके बच्चे या मेंटरीज आगे चले जाते हैं उनसे. This is one of those moments. Actually, the reason why I'm not being able to control my tears, of course, is that I revisited this work and it's hit me, and COVID time has made us all very sensitive. But it's also the fact that I'm here at your invitation. You were such a young girl when we first met.